15 games in, we got to do a real contender roll call. Serious contenders only. That's what we're talking about here today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm the host, Tony Wiggins, also known as The Barber, and you are in the barbershop. And today's show on the barbershop is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel and end the season with a big return. Also, new customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Of course, we have the local expert of the day, that is Julian Council. He will join me as we discuss these things. Lamar and the Ravens clear a big hurdle. They had not played well against the Steelers. They had lost 8 of 9. They found a little mojo the other day and got by. We'll talk about them and why I think they are one of the teams that are the keys to these entire playoffs. All roads run through Kansas City, if you ask me. Now that it appears that they're positioning themselves, of course, things can still happen in the last 2 weeks, but it looks like they have the home field in their control if they want it. And serious contender roll call, that's where we're going to start here at the very top of today's show with my man, Julian Council. Also, make sure you go over to check out Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. That's right, Amazon Music. Locked On NFL is locked on Amazon Music. Julian Council, what's going on? And big football weekend. Things kind of, this is about the time when fantasy football championships are being won and teams are serious and everybody's jockeying and playing for something, trying to make sure, okay, we need to get ourselves together. I think this weekend was very, very telling for a lot of reasons in the National Football League.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're right there, 2 weeks left in the season, trying to figure out who's going to end up having those seeds, who's going to get that bye. Looks like Kansas City and the AFC is going to get it. And in the NFC, there's still a lot up for grabs in the next 2 weeks. Philadelphia drops that game to Washington in dramatic fashion on Sunday. Minnesota goes all the way to Seattle. And now they're still at 13-2, tied with Detroit. And we're looking at potentially a Sunday night football game between them and next Sunday that will decide the NFC North and the number 1 seed. And quite possibly the Vikings should be the team that we're all looking at as maybe the team in the NFC based off how Sam Darnold's played this season, finally living up to that top 3 billing after coming out of USC and getting drafted by the Jets, failing in Carolina, failing, I suppose you could say, not really in San Francisco, but getting an opportunity and finally a good system with Justin Jefferson and that defense led by Brian Flores. Quite possibly the Vikings are that team. I've been all about Detroit all season long, but now I'm starting to think after watching that game on Sunday, maybe my old buddy Sam Darnold, maybe he's finally got it.
I'm telling you, man, and it was dramatic. They got there, and see, that's, to me, that's what a good team does. Whatever you got to do, I don't care how much time you. It's almost as if I think back to when I was watching that documentary with Michael Jordan, and Larry Bird was coaching Indiana, and Reggie hit a shot. Reggie Miller. The first thing Larry Bird went was bang. Like, how much time did we leave him? I know we ain't getting to the point with Sam Darnold now when he got those 4 minutes yesterday that we're going to sit here and go, oh, God, Sam, we just left Sam 4 minutes. But, man, that's what he did yesterday, and I think it was super, super impressive. There's a guy in Kansas City, we're used to him doing that all the time. I don't care if he sprains his ankle, twists his ankle the other way, limps off, whatever. That is my man, Patrick Mahomes, and it looks like they are homing in. It looked like he found him a number 1 receiver, too. They're homing in on home field advantage. It's a lot of times to say home, but listen to Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs.
The Kansas City Chiefs moved to 14-1 on the season. They beat the Houston Texans 27-19. They are now 1 game away from clinching the number 1 seed in the AFC and having a first-round bye. They have 2 games to play. They win one of them, they are the number 1 seed automatically. Another thing to watch will be Buffalo playing against the New England Patriots. Something to watch on Sunday. This was a great game for the Chiefs. They were able to get some things done. Hollywood Brown returned. Patrick Mahomes got Hollywood Brown involved in the offense. Xavier Worthy was a large part of the offense for most of the day. They used DeAndre Hopkins at times. Travis Kelce had a couple of catches as well, but wasn't a heavy part of the offense. This is something where I think that they were just trying to do enough just to get the win. They got that done, and now they are sitting in the catbird seat, ready to be the number one seed in the AFC. Much more on Locked On Chiefs.
We've been beating up on the Chiefs all year for being lucky, for not looking right. And just the thought of a team being 14-1 with the chance of being 16-1. Is this going to be one of those seasons where we go back and be like, what were we thinking? That's like one of the best teams we've ever seen, with one of the best coaches and quarterbacks we've ever seen. Somebody got to beat them, man. We're going to figure out today if somebody can.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the discourse that's been going on over the weekend in college football and how people don't want to value wins and people don't want to sit here and appreciate teams that never have the kind of seasons that they have that kind of season and be like, oh, they don't belong. I don't want to sit here and do that. But the great thing about the NFL is it doesn't matter what we think. There is a format. And if you win your division, you're in the playoffs, whether you're 7-8-1 or 8-8. And we have seen teams like Seattle and like Carolina be in those positions and win those home games in the playoffs. It does not matter what we say. If you win the games, you're in position to host a playoff game to get to the Super Bowl, and that's all that matters. That's honestly the beautiful thing about this league compared to the lower league in college football and some of the discourse around it. So I don't want to sit here and not appreciate this any longer. Like, the team's 14-1. Now, the one thing I am hoping is that Kansas City loses to Pittsburgh, because I do not want a scenario where they're going to sit out week 18 against Denver, where the Broncos, they got a big game coming up next Saturday with Cincinnati, and the Bengals need the Broncos to lose twice. And if they beat Denver and Kansas City goes out there and has already won on Christmas Day, it's not going to matter because Denver's going to get to play the Chiefs' second team and the whole integrity of the league and all that. Like, I hate when teams decide, let's just mail it in this final game that then actually matters in a team like Cincy, who has had plenty of opportunities this season to find a way to be in better position to make the playoffs, then get screwed in the process. Like, they screwed themselves. So I'm going to appreciate what Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City's done this season, being 14-1, while also asking them to lose on Wednesday so that week 18 still matters, and every game in this league is going to matter, and there's not going to be a situation that could occur where Cincy, who's their own team to blame, that they are end up not having an opportunity to make it because, well, Casey's now we're going to sit here, we're going to be off for like 2 weeks now and prepare for the playoffs.
And I just mentioned fantasy football. You're dead right. All the fantasy football championships, they'll be done by next weekend. Ain't nobody playing around with week 18 because people, you trying to sit there and win and they bench all your good players, man. Ain't nobody going for that. But no, you make a very, very valid point. We're going to look over at the NFC. And just a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a week ago, people were gung-ho thinking that, man, the NFC might have the two best teams. They got two shots. Julian just said it. The bottom line is neither one of those teams might get the home field advantage. We'll take a look at their Sundays and talk about who can actually challenge the KC Chiefs. We'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks, plus the holiday season. They're giving away $30 million in rewards during Pixmas and offering 2 free picks in December when your picks hit. Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking forward to Jared Goff. He's been on a tear, man. He's going to throw for more than 230, and Saquon Barkley wants that rushing record. So I'm sure that he'll get more than one touchdown. It's just that quick and simple. So much fun to challenge myself and all of my friends. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play the first $5. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, rolling along here with my man Julian Council here on Locked On NFL. A couple of contenders played this weekend, played yesterday. One of them was the game of the day. I know my man Geno and Louis up with Locked On Eagles probably think that, okay, it wasn't like the greatest game, and it was like pulling teeth a little bit. But I think the end of the game always matters. Washington hung around long enough with Philadelphia for things to go their way right at the end, and Jaden Daniels had his you would call it a Heisman moment if it was college, but he had his pro debut moment.
Rookie of the year moment.
Yeah, rookie of the year, right? There you go. Check out my man Geno, and we'll come back and dissect this game and see what it means for the Philadelphia Eagles.
In a game that was about as fun as getting a root canal at the dentist, the Philadelphia Eagles drop a huge game, 36-33 to the Washington Commanders. I'm Geno Camilleri, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, and this game came down to one thing: the quarterback. Jaden Daniels stepped up when it mattered. 5 touchdowns on the day, a game-clinching touchdown with 6 seconds left. The tough part about the Eagles' game plan: they didn't plan for Kenny Pickett to come into this game. Jalen Hurts goes out with a concussion. Fingers crossed that he is healthy, along with Jordan Davis and Darius Slay and a lot of other guys who were banged up in this game. Out goes the 1 seed and any chance at that. But right now, this team has to get healthy for a playoff run, and it most likely will be a repeat of this game. Tune in for the Locked On Eagles podcast for more.
You see, there's some people up in Detroit right now saying, did you just name 2 people and he's saying they got to get healthy? Yeah, that's what he did. And so my point with the Eagles is, if Jalen Hurts stays in the game, they win the game. But this goes to all of those folks that go, oh, it's all about Saquon. No, it's all about all of them. You can't just take when you're talking about winning a championship, they're going to need all hands on deck and everybody on board.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out whether they are out of the number 1 seed picture, because right now it's like usually a conference record is ending up to be the tiebreaker if you don't play head to head. And like Minnesota's right now sitting at 8-2, Detroit's at 9-1. So Detroit would have to lose out, obviously, for them to be able to get the 1 seed. And if they lose out, then they're 13-4. Philly is 14-3. So that one's pretty simple. But if you're looking at Minnesota, if the Vikings lose to the Packers or lose to the Lions, either way, like they're going to then be at best 9-3 in the conference, and maybe Philly wins the tiebreaker that way. So I don't think it's necessarily over. It feels unlikely at this point in time. Like Dallas, they went out there and they possibly spoiled the Bucs' chances of winning the NFC South, which we're going to talk about later on. So they're looking better. And then they got the Giants, who we know they're just terrible. I don't even know how John Mara is really going to be able to keep Joe Shane and the bald man there. I'm sorry, Brian Daboll. Yeah. Couldn't remember his name for a second. I don't know how they're going to keep him there in charge for another year. So I think it's a little bit dramatic. Like Philly's still going to probably have an opportunity they're going to have a playoff game. They're going to win the division. I think they've already won it. So they're going to be fine. They're going to probably be able to, as long as Saquon's healthy, as long as Jalen Hurts is healthy, this is still going to be a team that's going to be a contender for the Super Bowl. So it sucks that they're not going to likely have teams go to Philly, where if that was the case, absolutely no way. I don't think the Eagles aren't going to the Super Bowl. Right. But now it's just going to be a little bit tougher. And hey, the things in life that you want, they're not always easy.
Yeah, they're not always easy, and I don't think this is going to be easy. It hasn't been easy for Detroit. Detroit ain't making no excuses. I'm going to tell you one thing. If they win it with all of these injuries, Dan Campbell will go down as the greatest coach, one of the greatest coaches. This is one of the greatest seasons ever, and he'll be a legend because of all of these injuries. Things have not been easy for them. One thing I like about Detroit, though, even though they know they're shorthanded, they're gonna fight, man, and they're gonna do trick plays. They're gonna throw the ball on laterals back to offensive line. They don't care what they do, man. Detroit's gonna figure that out. Listen to my man Matt Derry talk about their victory in Chicago yesterday.
The Detroit Lions are in the driver's seat to get that first round bye and have the best record in the NFC. They go into Chicago today and blister the Bears 34-17. Bottom line, Jared Goff and that Lions offense just humming again. They wore down Chicago with the ground game. Jahmyr Gibbs over 100 yards rushing. Goff 336 yards passing. It was a surgical performance today led by that Lions offensive line. Defense harassed Caleb Williams all day, and they win 34-17, sweeping the season series from the Bears. These 13 wins the most in franchise history. A complete breakdown on a Sunday Locked On Lions coming up.
JC, I never get sentimental and start feeling bad for teams that have injuries, but come on, man. At some point, I admit I'm about 8 injuries beyond feeling bad for the Lions, saying, "Come on, this just ain't right."
Yeah, it's tough. And like I've said, I wanted all season long for this team that's clearly been the best team in my eyes to stay healthy and not to be compromised and end up not winning the Super Bowl because of it. But it is a long season. It's a week-to-week league, and we're finding out just how long it can be, especially for a team like Detroit that has looked like the best team at points in times, and they bounce back. I mean, the Bears are a team clearly they have no respect for, as we've discussed on this show. When Ben Johnson and this offense has no respect for you, they do the hook and ladders to Penei Sewell. They do all these the fake trip with Jared Goff.
Dudes acting like they falling down. Look like a Chris Brown video or something, right?
Just getting absolutely clowned. So the Bears, they have their own issues, and we can talk about that, I guess, next year, because that's not a team worth our time right now. But Detroit's going to come down, I think, to that final game. I think at home against Minnesota, probably on Sunday Night Football. If the Vikings are able to win next week, and if they don't win next week against the Packers, I still think that whoever wins that game ends up winning the division either way. So yeah, it's good to see them bounce back. Bears are a joke, and there's still a lot left to play for here for Detroit. And they really, of all those teams, whether it's the Vikings or the Eagles, of those top 3 right now in the NFC, they desperately need to have that bye. And I don't want to ever hear anybody talk about, oh, the bye is not important. You have one less game you got to play, one less opportunity for your team to get hurt. It is massively important for them, especially to get this bye week.
It is. It's going to be fun, though, watching how this all unfolds. One of the teams that's still involved a little bit in that is Green Bay. I think Green Bay has a chance to be a really, really scary team. They have a Monday night game tonight. We'll preview that. But first, we'll talk about 2 quirky teams in the third segment. And what I mean by quirky is just the teams that I think that just you have a party, and if there's one person going to act up, it's that one cousin. He always just like Rick James. He's going to come in, and Baltimore in the AFC, they don't care. And I thought Tampa was that team who didn't care until Tampa disappointed me last night in a major way. I'll discuss all of those things in segment 3 here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel, man, you have so many ways you can pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. It makes you feel like you're really, really in tune with the game. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I've been running it down here, third and final segment here on Locked On NFL, where we have been talking about series contender roll call. We mentioned a lot of teams that we believe have a chance to win, because that's what it's all about this time of the year. I think all roads run through Kansas City, but I do believe if there's one team weird, quirky, don't care, chip on their shoulder. See, normally that would be the Bengals, right? But the Bengals have some work to do. Like JC said, they have to win both of their games. It's the Ravens. The Ravens won a game this Saturday. They won a game that they normally have struggled with Pittsburgh. They had lost 8 out of 9, but Baltimore was able to pull it out in an impressive fashion. And here's Kevin Oestreicher to tell you just how.
The Baltimore Ravens pick up a big win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 16. I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. It was a soul-snatching performance from the Ravens, 34-17, the final score over the Steelers, and it opens up the door for them to steal the AFC North from Pittsburgh with 2 weeks to go in the NFL season. Lamar Jackson, 3 more passing touchdowns. Derrick Henry runs wild on the Steelers defense, and guys like Ardarius Washington, Kyle Van Noy, David Ojabo on the defensive side of the ball doing a lot of great work there. Baltimore now will have a couple of days to rest before going down to Houston to face the Houston Texans in a Christmas Day battle. For more on the Ravens and their big Week 16 win over the Steelers, be sure to check out the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Julian, I was watching the game the other day. I thought Baltimore was playing with their breakfast. They were playing with their food too much. And I'm like, if y'all don't put them away, they're going to beat you. And then they were able to turn it around and get it right at the end.
Yeah, massive win for the Ravens. And you look at things right now, they are still the 5 seed. They have to go to Houston on the road in Super Wild Card weekend. And then after that, likely have to face Kansas City in the divisional round. Then if they beat them, probably playing Buffalo. So whether they win the division or not, they're going to have to beat KC and have to beat Buffalo in order to go to the Super Bowl. And that's really for any team in these playoffs. They're going to have to go through those two teams likely in order to be able to go to New Orleans to play in the Super Bowl against whoever comes out of the NFC. So huge win for them. I don't really look at anybody as a threat to Kansas City outside of Buffalo right now. Like, I don't believe that Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson is going to get it done. No. Houston, I think they've been a little bit disappointing. Now their division's god awful, so that's certainly helped them never have to be really under any threat. Now, of course, I guess they could lose out and the Colts could win out and then find a way to win the division, I believe. I don't know what the tiebreaker situation is there in the AFC. I want to say Houston beat them twice, so it may not even.
I think they've clinched it.
Yeah, so I think they've already clinched. So whatever. I don't think that's a team that's going to do anything once we get to the whole AFC playoff. So maybe Baltimore can, Lamar, and there's certainly, I guess, the ghost of the past of whether he can win the big one, even though they were just playing an AFC title game a year ago. I mean, it's just like, okay, fine. Sorry, you didn't beat Patrick Mahomes at home. It happens. It happened to Buffalo too, and I don't ever hear that about Josh Allen, just saying. So we'll see what they're able to do here to close things out. But they're right there in the thick of things in the AFC North, of course.
People kill me when they bring that up about Lamar. Like, we didn't sit here and watch Peyton Manning not be able to win until he was like 28. I mean, Come on, man. And Drew Brees and Brett Favre. It's like the worst thing Lamar is doing the same thing that like 10 other people that you should have watched play as a kid did. And they ended up first ballot Hall of Famers and champions. So that stuff ain't going to stop. I guess when he wins one, they're going to want him to win two. The NFC had a quirky little team, a team that had beaten both of the teams that we thought were pretty decent, and they were trending towards being healthy. And then because of the recency of the championship, even though Tampa won with Tom Brady, you still feel like there's enough people in the building that can kind of make that thing kind of weird. Well, then they go and play the Dallas Cowboys, who have absolutely nothing to play for, and they lose, and I might have to rethink it. Here's James Yarko from Locked On Bucs to talk about that game.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose a wild game on Sunday night. I am James Yarko, host of Locked On Bucs, talking about the Buccaneers' 26-24 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush was dominant in the first half, throwing for 220 yards and a touchdown against Todd Bowles' defense. But that defense tightened up in the second half, allowing only 3 points, but the offense couldn't get things going. An incredible play at the end of the game where Rachaad White was stripped of the ball, ended the Bucs' comeback bid, and they now drop to second place in the NFC South. They need a win by the Washington Commanders next week against the Atlanta Falcons, and they still have to beat the Panthers and the Saints to finish the season in order to win the NFC South. For more on this and all things Buccaneers, check out the Locked On Bucs podcast 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So Tampa goes into the weekend as a hot, scary team, and they come out of the weekend a team needing other people to do things for them in order to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they do. And like you mentioned, and it's funny, it's looking at James, looks like he's ready to host Locked On Illinois after losing that game. So I guess he was too ashamed to wear any Bucs gear. God love him. But looking at it, like Washington and Atlanta, obviously huge game for Tampa. And if Atlanta is able to win out, as you mentioned, they win the division. And the thing too about Washington, Atlanta, and Dallas, like Dallas is not quitting on this season. It's possible they drop their final two games. That could open up the door for Tampa if Tampa wins out. and they could possibly get into the NFC playoffs that way. If I'm looking at it, because I think they would actually have the tiebreaker if you talk about division record, as it would be 8-4 to NFC, where Washington would fall to 7-5. So that would help them get in that way. But the best way for them to do is to watch Washington lose or beat Atlanta rather, and then for them to be able to beat Carolina, a team who they honestly should have lost to a couple weeks ago in that overtime game in Charlotte, and they found a way to win. New Orleans will not be much of a tough test at all, but disappointing for Tampa to lose that. But a lot of credit to the Cowboys for still playing. Before they kicked that ball off, they were already out of the playoff picture.
Yep.
And they've come out the last 2 weeks. They played hard. I mean, they played hard against Cincinnati, and they've tried to keep winning. I talked about earlier, like integrity of the game. Try to win. And I love when teams that are out of the, like Carolina go on Sunday, beating Arizona. Panthers have nothing to play for other than just pride and trying to build towards next season. Dallas doing the same thing, trying to keep things going. Mike McCarthy want to keep his job for next year. So a lot of credit to them. But for Tampa, they're going to need some help. Really, either Washington loses out and they get in that way, or Atlanta does Atlanta things and they drop one of these games in the final 2 weeks. So we'll see how things play out for them. But that's a tough loss for the Bucs that had control, not of their destiny, because if it was destiny, then it would already have happened. It's predetermined. They had control of their ability to make the playoffs, which is no longer the case right now.
And people will look at the game and they'll look at the schedule and go, oh, they got Carolina. That's an easy one. Oh, no, it ain't. I lost a parlay yesterday messing around with Arizona and messing around against Bryce Young, who I want to park it right there and talk about these young quarterbacks. What do you think of Michael Penix's play yesterday? And then Carolina ain't going to be in the market for no quarterback like everybody thought. Bryce Young has really, really turned it around.
Yeah, no, first we'll start off with Michael Penix Jr., the way he played yesterday. It's not necessarily the most impressive performance, but he took care of the football. The one interception wasn't really on him. It was on Kyle Pitts. Got to catch the ball there in that situation. So he took care of the ball, and that's one of the things that led Raheem Morris and the Falcons brass to make the change from Kirk Cousins to him. Always going to be a curious decision to, instead of trying to help the team and help Kirk, that they decided to draft Michael Penix Jr. Now we see why they ended up wanting to do that, as Kirk Cousins has been at points times a liability as far as taking care of the football this season. So I thought he played fairly well for a first-time start. And it's good to get the New York Giants team that tanked their season once they got rid of Daniel Jones. You can never convince me that they were trying to do what's best for the team. They were never going to win a game after that. They could have at least won a couple of games potentially with Daniel Jones. Once they put in Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock, they had no chance at all. And I just don't see how that general manager and Joe Shane and that head coach and Brian Daboll can come back to New York next year. Like, I saw a tweet about a bunch of firsts since the Giants have been like the worst team and had a number one all pick and all of that. But talking about Carolina, as you asked me, yeah, Bryce Young bounces back after having 4 turnovers a week ago against Dallas, which was a career high, to playing a good game. And statistically, it's never overwhelming when you look at Bryce Young in the stat chart, but he's getting it done. Took care of the football, had 3 touchdowns, 1 on the ground yesterday in that game against Arizona. And he's continued to lead his team down the field when they've needed a drive to win some of these games, to tie some of these games, take them to overtime, whatever it may be. So a lot of credit to Bryce. And yeah, Carolina's got 2 more games, got to evaluate. Can't forget Dave Canales was constant when he said Andy Dalton gave the best chance, and it took a car accident to even give Bryce Young another opportunity.
Right.
So you have to still wonder, does he believe in Bryce Young as his quarterback? He finally did say on Friday that Bryce will be the guy the rest of the way. So it took forever for that to even happen, but it feels like Bryce Young should be back and will be back in 2025, and then we'll see what happens beyond that.
And you'll be back next Monday, because that's what you always do. My man Julian, counsel of Locked On Panthers, Locked On NFL, always here to break it down to you. Make sure you tap in. Tyler Rowland will give you an update early in the morning on Locked On NFL, the AM Madman Tyler Rowland version of the show. Make sure you tap in and then slide back by the barbershop here on Locked On NFL with me, Tony Wiggins. For my man Julian, counsel, and for me and all of us here at Locked On NFL, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.